back for more Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is episode 7 of season 2. Very excited as always to carry on, see what's going to be happening next. Last episode we were introduced to Toph, I believe is how we say her name, hopefully. Otherwise, they will come for me, I'm sorry. But yeah, she's kind of run away from her family, who really underestimated how badass she was, I suppose. And she's gone off with Aang and co. Hopefully she's going to be the one to teach Aang some earthbending, to let him master that. And her father has now sent people to hunt her down and bring her back, so that's not great. That's more people to hunt Team Avatar down, which isn't ideal. But yeah, I'm excited to see where that's all going to lead and where they're going with this season as they delve further into it. I mean, I feel like, you know, we started it last week, and yet we're coming up to nearly 2 months since we started this season now, which seems mad, and we're nearly halfway through the season all over again. And when we get halfway through the season, we're halfway through the show, which is nuts. But yes, I'm very excited as ever to see where they're going to be taking things next, so let's just get into it. Not every day we get an actual character name in the title like that. And when we do, they try to blow up a dam and flood a village, so... Cool. Oh... No, you can't steal from them. Right. Oh. You little shits.
Hey! Egg had to come from somewhere. Maybe a chicken flew over.
I was going to say a chicken. We can finally find out which came first.
For your contribution.
I'll take it to my house and feed your ostrich horse for you. Come on.
You could have just not thrown the egg at the person, but okay.
Does this guy have a name?
He doesn't have to say who he is if he doesn't want to, Seela. Anyone who can hold his own against those bully soldiers is welcome here.
Oh.
Those men should be ashamed.
Would you like to stay?
I can't. I should be moving on.
Gonzo could use some help on the barn. Why don't you two work for a while, and then we'll eat.
Oh. They want him to feel like he's earned the food. And that's the only way you do it.
A man's past is his business.
We're getting flashbacks? Aw. I want one.
If you mess with their babies, they're gonna bite you back.
Aw. No.
What's this?
Oh, these are the girls that she rounded up now, right?
It's important for us to spend time together. Don't you think so, Mom?
Yes, darling. I think it's a good idea to play with your sister. Go on now. Just for a little while.
She's always known how to work people.
Passing say must be something to behold. I hope you all may see it someday. If we don't...
Oh, doesn't something go wrong there?
A pearl dagger from the general who surrendered when we broke through the outer wall. Note the inscription and the superior craftsmanship.
Never give up without a fight.
Oh, is that the one he used to cut his hair off? Or was that a different one?
I still think our dad would make a much better Fire Lord than his royal tea-loving kookiness.
She's quite something, isn't she? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
What did the flowers do to you, sir?
They're just two different parts of the same whole.
Oh, he's so willing to share. Just not his past, you know. Oh, I like that they can show Zuko can make connections, like outside of just, you know, Iroh. He can actually have friends.
Your son's battalion got captured.
Iroh has lost his son. Your cousin, Lieutenant, did not survive the battle.
Oh.
What's gonna happen to my brother?
Oh.
The front.
Here, I want you to have this. Read the inscription.
Made in Earth Kingdom.
the other one.
A real general would stay and burn Ba Sing Se to the ground, not lose the battle and come home crying.
How do you know what he should
Wow.
do?
He's not exactly the powerful Fire Lord he used to be. Someone will probably end up taking his place soon.
Young lady, not another word.
Are you capable of saying anything without sass? Well, they never really show his full face.
That's who you are, Zuko. Someone who keeps fighting even though it's hard.
Exactly.
Prince Ozai, revoke Iroh's birthright. I am your humble servant, here to serve you and our nation. Use me. You dare suggest I betray Iroh? Iroh has suffered enough. But you, your punishment has scarcely begun.
Well, this family's
Going to kill you.
something.
Really, he is.
Your father would never do what to you? What is going on here?
Azula's horrible. That's what's going on here. Berate that child.
Azula always lies.
Azula always lies.
Sadly, he still has to tell himself that.
You have to help. It's Lee. The thugs from town came back as soon as Gonsu left. When they ordered us to give them food, Lee pulled a knife on them. I don't even know where he got a knife. They told me if Lee's old enough to fight, he's old enough to join the army.
Oh, God.
I know we barely know you, but
I'll get your son back.
Hell yeah, he will. God, I love the lighting on this show. Not even using firebending. He tends not to, doesn't he, when he's on his own? Hammer time. Ooh! Oh, that was so powerful it went back in time.
listen to me. Never forget who you are.
Oh, she just leaves. There we go. Reforged in fire.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
Zuko.
Ah,
Ursa and Fire Lord Ozai.
he's owning the name now.
Prince of the Fire Nation.
Not a step closer.
It's yours.
How grateful.
Have it.
No, I hate you.
Oh my goodness. That's really sad.
Grandpa passed away.
Not funny, Azula. You're sick. And I want my knife back. Now.
Who's going to make me? Mom?
I hate her. I hate her.
Where is she?
As was your dying wish, you are now succeeded by your second son.
Well. Shenanigans. Well, you know what? Your farm was rubbish, so whatever. Ah, what a great shot. Oh, that's so sad. Those people suck. I know they have every reason to hate Fire Nation people and stuff, but they don't know him. Okay, well, I adored that episode. So good. Really enjoyed that it was just like focusing on Zuko, and we didn't even see like Aang or Katara or Sokka or any of them in it, which is quite something. 'Cause, you know, we've had a couple of episodes now, you know, that Zuko hasn't been in, but it's quite something when Aang and Co aren't in an episode. So that was really interesting, and I like how they didn't, I guess, want to clutter an episode that was such a big one character-wise for Zuko, with, you know, feeling like they had to put Aang and stuff in it as well. So I really enjoyed it was just focusing on Zuko, because he is, you know, a really, really interesting character, and I like that they can explore him in such a detailed way, and just give him a whole episode and follow him travelling on his own, while still incorporating some other characters like in the backstory, but the main character of like the present day stuff was Zuko, and everyone else we kind of only met for the first time in this episode, and they're all horrible people. I mean, they're not, I get, you know, they're not going to like the Fire Nation, and, you know, by association they're not going to like Zuko, even though they got a glimpse of who he really is, or at least who he's becoming, And yet that's still not enough when you find out what his name is, you know. I think it's particularly interesting we didn't get the perspective of the dad on that farm. He didn't, you know, I don't know if he was in that scene, I don't think he was, but if he had been there and like actually spoke up, what would he have said? Because he was like, oh, you know, he doesn't need to share his past with us, blah 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 blah. So I wonder if he'd actually defended Zuko, because you know the boy Lee and Lee's mother, you know, instantly just turned on him when they found out who he was. So that's gratitude for you, folks. All that from that bloody little shit throwing eggs. Tell him to shove that egg next time, sir. Yeesh. He could have had a really cool knife, but fine. Give it back. Stupid boy. But again, I understand like their fear and hatred of Fire Nation people. I mean, there are good Fire Nation people though, as we've explored in the show, but maybe these guys just don't know that. And like even they're surrounded by this rubbish army of earthbenders as well, who aren't particularly nice people. They're just, you know, causing a bit of a ruckus to make them feel more powerful and important than they actually are. So I guess anyone who's in a position of authority, like a prince, for example, would certainly be someone that those people weren't big fans of. And on top of that, you know, he's an outcast, so that could just put a mark on their backs, I suppose, a target on their backs, if they were like, oh yeah, we're friends with Zuko, we saw him recently, because, you know, he is still a fugitive on the run being hunted down. So I can understand it to an extent, but, you know, just be willing to let people change, folks. It's a complicated situation, I know, there's a lot to unpack with all of it, and I like how they drew a lot of parallels to what was going on with Lee and his family, and what was going on with all of that, to what was happening in the flashbacks we saw with Zuko and Azula and his parents and stuff. It was cool to get that backstory as well, seeing, I think, is it Ozai? Is that his father's name? See him actually become the Fire Lord after what I'm assuming he murdered his own father, right? Or like forced him to name him the next heir and then killed him or whatever. It seems to be that's the shenanigans that were going on down there. But yeah, it was cool to see all of that, and just to see you know, the immediate impact of Iroh losing his son, which they'd mentioned a few, you know, previously, and that's kind of why Iroh had lost that big battle that cost him a lot of his respect way back when. It was actually, you know, he'd just lost his son and everything. So I liked that, and how they showcased that Azula's just always been heartless and horrible, whereas Zuko wasn't always as cold as he was, I think, when we first met him. You know, obviously how he was raised after his mother left kind of made him that way, and that's the tragedy, I think, of his mother trying to tell him, don't forget who you are no matter what, but sometimes the reality just can't be that. Maybe he never did forget the real compassionate side, but I think he is kind of learning to accept and, you know, explore and expand upon again now, but with his dad being the way he was, and Azula being like the perfect child who just kept taunting him and making him feel small, much like the Earthbender army guys would like him to do, you know, just make everyone else feel tiny so they appear bigger. The trouble is with Azula, she also is actually very good and powerful, so it's just gonna give her that ego, isn't it? Because she actually is very good and, you know, powerful and has a presence, while also making people feel small at the same time. But that's also a reflection of her character, I guess, is that she doesn't need to make people feel small, because she is very capable and badass anyway, but she does it anyway because she's horrible. But it was cool to get the insight to how Zuko used to be, and, you know, the fact that his father like burned his face and everything that went down the line, it's gonna make you kind of cold and resentful when you know, being an outcast and everything as well. So I like kind of getting all those flashbacks and seeing some of the origins, I guess, of the Zuko we met at the very start of the show. And it's a nice showcase of where he is at now and where his journey is leading. The fact that I think he's once again reclaiming who he is. Like that scene at the end where he did openly tell people, "This is who I am," and I'm sure he probably knew that once they knew that, they'd just turn on him. But he is still not hiding and shying away from that anymore, which is also very interesting and speaks to his bravery, the fact that he is on the run, and he would be actively hunted down. But he's still like, yeah, I'm Zuko, that's me, come get me. He's obviously very confident in his abilities and stuff. And again, when he was fighting for the most part, he wasn't using his firebending until like the very end, just to like get that guy away from him. A lot of the time it was just, his swords or his wits, whatever. Which tends to be what he relies on when it's just him acting of his own accord. Like when he's the Blue Spirit, you don't really see him use firebending and stuff. And that's often when he performs at his best. So it's kind of like he's just not meant to be part of that family, but that's just what he was born into. And even what Zuko said before, his dad, what was it he said exactly? He was like, he said like Zuko was lucky to even be born or something. And Azula was born lucky or something like that in like contrast. So the fact that we've gotten context with him saying that, and where he is now, is all just a big mess. It's awful, because Zuko himself has also done all like terrible things like we've seen, but I like that this episode really showed the compassion that he still has and hasn't actually lost and can work towards again. Like he was going to rob that couple of their food, and then he saw that the woman was pregnant, so he left them to it, even though he was like starving and nearly passing out and everything. When he went to also like get some grain for his horse, camel, weird ostrich thing, he still prioritised getting some grain for that and not just food for himself as well. There is that care in there, and I think that's kind of him reclaiming that in a sense, with him saying, "This is who I am, come get me." And it's just sad to see how they turned on him, given the parallels between Zuko's reaction to when Iroh lost his son in the war, and then this new family he just befriended and had helped him out up until this point. He kind of formed a connection with like Lee. He actually almost became a friend to him, and I like that they could showcase that was possible. And then when Lee was taken and everything, it's just like history almost repeating itself. Zuko wasn't going to let that side of things happen. He also felt he was to blame when Lee was taken, because he'd been given Zuko's knife, and then he still wanted Lee to have that, but he was like, "No thank you, sir." I'm like, fine. It's so kind of frustrating for Zuko's behalf, as someone who just, if you in a twisted way, like it's just, even right from the start when Zuko was like the villain, like properly the villain, you still kind of root for him in a sense, or you want what's best for him, you don't want him to get injured or anything. The fact that the show still managed to do that, but now it's really justifying you feeling that way, I think, about Zuko in season 1, just seeing, any other circumstance, any other family, he would turn out so much different, and I think he has the capability to still be that person that he could be, and that his mother always wanted him to be, it would seem. The person that he could have been, maybe if his mother had stayed. I wonder if they're going to re-explore that, because they didn't explicitly say that she's like dead, she just vanished. I don't know if they've ever mentioned either way, if she's dead or not, in present day stuff, but that is something to maybe revisit, hopefully. But yeah, I liked Zuko's journey to, by the end, he's often shied away, not giving his real name to people when he was travelling with Iroh. Now he's on his own, he's just owning it a bit. And as he's like stepping through the fire that he'd created, it's kind of like he was reforging himself a bit, and he's like, oh, this is who I'm gonna be now. And if he's gonna own who he is, own his name, people are turning away from him, I think it's gonna be the journey of him trying to find someone who will just accept him for who he is, and know who he is, and needs a firebending teacher, maybe. Because I always go back, I know I talk about it, I know it's probably a drinking game by this point whenever Leah mentions the scene where Aang is kind of saying, do you think if we were both kids together we would have been friends? I always go back to that scene because I feel like it's just an important one, and I just feel like Team Avatar could maybe be Zuko's people, especially now that him owning his name in the way he did, and kind of finding a peace for himself and with himself that I don't think he's had for a very long time. Especially because he doesn't have Azula breathing down his neck every 5 seconds telling him how rubbish he is. Azula gets stuffed. Now he has that, I think. I mean, I feel like Aang would be like, yeah, we can have him on board, because he has said things like that in the past, like, and there's a lot of similarities between them. I feel like maybe Katara and Sokka would probably take a bit more convincing, and maybe Toph, I don't know what her feelings on Zuko would be. But maybe that's the logical next step for him, or maybe they're just going to keep him on his own. But then, what's the end game for him with the show if he just stays on his own for God knows how long? I feel like they must cross paths again, and something significant's going to happen. I just don't know what. I'm kind of just, putting all my eggs in one basket, I guess, in terms of maybe Zuko can teach Aang firebending, or they might just do something different with it. I don't know. Maybe Azula will also be somewhat redeemed and she teaches Aang. Who can say? Anything can happen. But I feel like they went out of their way to just show that it's ingrained in Azula to just be this horrible, and just so cold and calculated. She's thinking about the power. She's very much her father's daughter. It seemed like more so Zuko was his mother's son, and he was the compassionate one. Whereas Azula did not quite so have that, but it was interesting to see that contrast and the fact that it's always been quite an antagonistic relationship between the two of them, even before one of them was hunting the other down. So I found that quite interesting, and how they were talking about, whether or not you belong in the war, you belong to the fight. So we kind of had what Azula was saying, like, oh, Uncle Iroh just gave up because he's so sad about his son dying, he didn't belong in the fight, he didn't belong in that war because he's just a coward and stupid and blah, blah, blah. Shut up, Azula. I like the character, but she's awful, isn't she? And then in this one, Zuko was kind of talking down to the earthbending army, saying, you're just picking the battles that will make you feel big, and you're not actually fighting a worthy cause in this war. And in turn, they were kind of wanting Lee to join the fight, I guess, because if he's got a weapon, he's old enough to fight in the army, everything that comes with that. So it's like, do you belong to a certain war? Should you be fighting in a war? All mixed in, I guess, into like which side you were born into in the first place. Can you switch that? Can you change it up? They've explored that idea, I think, a lot, especially with Zuko as a character, like when he was the Blue Spirit and stuff. So it would be interesting to see where they take that in future. I feel like I could just talk about the situation for donkey's years. I feel like there's just so many layers to it, and lots of complexities to the conflicts going on and all the different parallels they were exploring. But right now it's just a feeling of frustration on Zuko's behalf, because you can feel that he's changing. You can feel like this is who Zuko was meant to be, but people are just going to be so obsessed with his past, and Zuko has often shut that away and not been open about it. And even in this episode, he's not open about his past. He doesn't tell anyone his past, and exactly what went down, the truth about like his father and his grandfather and everything. He told the audience that through flashbacks, but he didn't open up to any single character, which I also think is interesting. But maybe that's something that can change if he finds the right people. Please, please justify my needless speculation by actually having him meet up with Aang and actually become his friend. But yeah, there's a lot of tragedy to Zuko, and I like that they spent a whole episode just catching up with where he is now, where he used to be, where he could possibly be going next, and just what the world's view of him still is right now. He's just the coward, the fugitive, the outcast, the monster, depending on their views. And can Zuko maybe change that viewpoint? Some people are just going to be too far gone. And again, I can understand some certain hatred or, resistance to someone from the Fire Nation. But they've also shown that not everyone is like that in the Fire Nation. It's not just like, it's not like Slytherin, Everyone's Slytherin. It just seems like if you're in a Slytherin, you're an evil person. Whereas they could have made that a bit more nuanced and actually had someone in Slytherin who's actually quite nice, but I don't think they ever really did that. But it's a bit more nuanced here, I guess, with the Fire Nation, because we've seen that there are good people. But it's just, people are kind of generalising it, you know, I guess it's kind of coded racism, I guess, in a way. Like, if you're from the Fire Nation, we just don't want to hear about you. I find that really fascinating, how they're exploring the prejudices, I guess, is more so the right term, with all the different nations, and that makes it very interesting to talk about the last episode, where I was kind of wondering, like, certain elements working together well. So we talked about air bending and earth bending actually kind of being quite complementary of each other. So the fact that you can go from that, and then another episode is like, but the nations themselves, and maybe not the elements that they can wield, but the nations, you know, there's a lot of kind of different conflicts going on with that. So there's just so many layers and different things that Avatar kind of delves into, and I just find it so fascinating, so interesting. I wonder if there's like a big book of like the history of everything and stuff that I can get once I've caught up with the show, because I wouldn't want anything spoiled in it or anything. But man, there's just so much depth to the show, and the episodes are 22 minutes long. That is really impressive, isn't it? And again, some of the lighting and the colouring, I've talked about that a lot in this show as well. And that final shot of Zuko walking into the sunset, I assume, was it the sunset or the sunrise? It could be symbolic either way. You know, it could be tragically ironic, him walking into the sunset, which is normally deemed like a happy ending for a character, but it was all but happy really for him there. Or the sunrise, it's kind of like this new Zuko who's reclaimed his name and, you know, he's reborn, I guess, reforged himself in his own flames when he kind of stepped through them. Just a new Zuko kind of rising a new day. Maybe it's a new chance for him to prove that he's not what everyone has always thought him to be. So that, again, it's just a lot to unpack, isn't it? It's so much good stuff. I feel like I could keep talking, but I also don't want to just repeat myself and start just chatting nonsense. But yeah, that was a fantastic episode. Might be my favourite episode of the season so far. Though saying that, I really liked the last episode as well. And I had a lot of fun with the one in the cave. But this is definitely up there, one of my favourites of the season. Maybe the entire show. I'd have to really think about all the individual season 1 episodes. But regardless, you know, I don't think there's been a bad episode of Avatar. So, you know, there have been like weaker ones for sure, but I don't think I could say that, oh, that episode was bad. You know, I didn't enjoy that one, because there's something to enjoy in all of them so far. But this one in particular was very, very good. And just, they can showcase the strength of Zuko's character in that. And I think not having him be in every single episode makes an episode like this, I mean, justified, first of all, but all the more powerful, I think. So yeah, I loved what they did with it, how they're exploring, you know, owning who you are, what battles you should fight, what wars you should fight, do you belong in war, you know, the destruction of it. Seeing how things went down when Zuko was a kid, how he was like that compared to Azula, and Azula's 2 friends that she now has with her in present day as well. That was all very well and good, and just seeing what his relationship with his mother was like compared to his relationship with Mark Hamill. And I do enjoy that they, you know, they don't really ever show the Fire Lord's full face, because we don't really know all that much about him anyway, aside from that he seems to be a bit of a dick. But like the origin of him becoming the Fire Lord and everything, it was really cool to see all that. And I look forward to seeing where on earth they're going next. I assume we will rejoin Aang and Co in the next episode. Maybe check in with Zuko as well, but they might also rest him for a bit again, since he just had a whole entire episode to himself, which is a really cool idea. I like how they changed it up. And yeah, they explored some really interesting things, as they often do in Avatar, and I probably delved too much into it, if anything. But yes, my camera battery's about to die, so I think this is probably my longest afterthoughts so far for Avatar, because my battery doesn't normally die when I record these, so apologies for that. If you've made it this far, congratulations, have a cookie. And yeah, I think that's going to be everything for now, out of necessity, because my camera's about to die, so that's going to be everything for now. Until my next reaction, thanks for watching.